The crisp autumn wind of Chicago gently caressed Sarah Hamilton's face. As a dedicated nurse at a bustling general hospital in the city, her hands, accustomed to over a decade of experience, moved with practiced ease, skilled at easing patients' pain. By 7 in the evening, her steps were weary as she left the hospital after a demanding shift, yet her heart felt remarkably light. Tonight, she had plans to visit her sister, Chloe, with her husband, Ethan. Opening the door to her home, the delicious aroma of dinner immediately wafted from the kitchen. Ethan, a lawyer specializing in family court, faced a daily routine that was never easy. His work involved the emotionally charged realms of divorce mediation, custody battles, and complex family property disputes, dealing with people in the most difficult phases of their lives. Yet, no matter how challenging his day, he always greeted Sarah with a warm smile upon her return. "Welcome home, honey," Ethan said, embracing his wife, still wearing his apron. "How was your day?" "Busy, but seeing patients recover and go home makes it all worthwhile," Sarah murmured, burying her face in Ethan's warm chest. "What time were we supposed to meet Chloe again?" "We're supposed to go to her apartment around 8, Ethan replied. "Arthur should be there, too." Chloe possessed a bright, sociable personality, working at a popular beauty salon in town. Trusted by her customers and always maintaining a cheerful demeanor, she was truly like sunshine within the family. 2 years prior, she had married Arthur Davies, who worked for a construction company. Arthur was an outwardly honest, hardworking man, and it was obvious to everyone that he truly adored Chloe. Their wedding had been a warm affair, surrounded by relatives and friends from both families. Sarah had shed tears upon seeing Chloe in her wedding dress, and Ethan, too, cherished Chloe like his own sister. Arthur, in turn, accepted Sarah and Ethan as his real family. 6 months after their marriage, Chloe announced her pregnancy. The entire family was overjoyed. Arthur, especially, couldn't hide his excitement about becoming a father. He eagerly looked forward to shopping for baby supplies and dedicated weekends to preparing the baby's room. Throughout Chloe's pregnancy, even during the difficult period of morning sickness, Arthur devotedly cared for her. "Arthur really is a wonderful husband," Sarah remarked to Ethan. "Seeing Chloe so loved and happy makes me happy too." "Yes, he is," Ethan smiled. "He's an earnest man, serious about his work and truly cherishes Chloe." Sometimes he was unreachable due to construction site work, but they viewed that as proof of his dedication to his job. Indeed, Arthur was often intensely busy, working on large construction projects. He was frequently called to the site, even on weekends. Chloe would often say with a laugh, "My husband is too responsible for his own good," but there was unmistakable pride in her words. On the drive to Chloe's apartment, Sarah reflected on her enduring relationship with her sister. The two had been exceptionally close since childhood, and whenever Chloe faced troubles, she would invariably consult with Sarah. Even after marriage, this dynamic hadn't changed. Throughout her pregnancy, Chloe frequently called Sarah, sharing her anxieties and joys about impending motherhood. She had mentioned wanting to discuss baby names. She mentioned Arthur Jr. for a boy and Emily for a girl, Sarah said to Ethan. "I think both are lovely names," Ethan replied, focused on the road. When they arrived at Chloe's apartment, Arthur greeted them at the entrance. His face looked tired, but he wore a warm, welcoming smile. "Sarah, Ethan, thank you for coming," Arthur said, welcoming them with embraces. "Chloe has been looking forward to your visit." In the living room, Chloe, 8 months pregnant, sat on the sofa, gently stroking her swollen belly. Her face glowed with the radiant happiness of impending motherhood, wearing a blissful expression. "Sarah, Ethan." Chloe tried to stand up, but Sarah hurried over. "Don't strain yourself, just stay seated." Sarah took Chloe's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Very well," Chloe smiled happily. "The baby is moving actively, too. Arthur talks to my belly every day. He's going to be a wonderful father." That night, the 4 of them enjoyed a wonderful time together. They discussed preparations for childbirth and joyfully made plans for the baby. The family bond was deep, and everyone eagerly awaited the arrival of the new family member. As Chicago entered its cold season, with only 1 month remaining until Chloe's due date, the entire family was immersed in a busy but happy period of preparation. Sarah was diligently adjusting her work schedule at the hospital, arranging for vacation time for several days before and after the birth. Her colleagues wholeheartedly blessed Chloe's upcoming arrival and promised their full support whenever needed. When I talked to the head nurse, she told me to contact. Meanwhile, Arthur was eagerly preparing for fatherhood. Despite his demanding work at construction sites, he meticulously found time to advance preparations for the baby. Assembling the crib, purchasing diapers and bottles, and decorating the baby's room, he strove to arrange everything perfectly. Arthur is really meticulous, Chloe told Sarah over the phone. Yesterday, he came home from work and washed all the baby clothes, arranging them by size. They're organized as neatly as a store display. What a wonderful husband, Sarah answered with a smile. Ethan was the same way when our friends had babies. Men seem to become especially meticulous at times like this. Arthur's job involved large commercial facility construction projects, and he held a highly responsible position. Therefore, he was sometimes called to the site even on weekends. Chloe initially felt a pang of loneliness when her husband left her alone during her pregnancy to go to work, but she gradually came to feel proud of his strong sense of responsibility. Arthur says he wants to create a better environment for Leo, Chloe explained to her sister. So, he's working hard to make this project successful and get promoted. I'm supporting him. Indeed, Arthur worked diligently for his family. He was often at the site from early morning until late evening, sometimes traveling to construction sites in other cities. However, no matter how busy he was, he always accompanied Chloe to her prenatal checkups. Sitting in the obstetrics waiting room, observing other expectant couples, he would say with deep emotion, "We're going to be parents soon, too." In mid-November, Chloe was scheduled for her final ultrasound examination. Sarah and Ethan also accompanied her to the hospital, watching the baby's image on the echo screen. The baby was developing well, and the doctor gave his seal of approval, saying, "The baby is in very healthy condition. We'll be able to meet soon." Chloe said tearfully, gazing at the screen, "You're going to be the best aunt this child could have." Of course, Sarah squeezed Chloe's hand. "We'll always support you, so don't worry." On the way home from the examination, the four of them stopped at a baby goods store. Though Arthur had already prepared most of what they needed, they chose newborn clothes together that Chloe particularly wanted to see. Holding the tiny clothes, Chloe smiled happily, saying, "Soon, there will be a baby inside these." "You're going to be a wonderful mother," Arthur said, putting his arm around his wife's shoulder. "I'll do my best to be the best father, too." That night, Sarah and Ethan discussed at home their impending roles as aunt and uncle. Though they had no children of their own, they vowed to love and raise Chloe's child as if it were their own. "I want us to be more than just relatives to this child," Ethan said. "I want to be someone they can always rely on when needed." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "Chloe is still young, and she'll probably be overwhelmed with her first experience of child rearing. We need to provide solid support." In early December, Chloe experienced mild false labor. Waking up in the middle of the night with abdominal pain, she frantically woke Arthur. They headed to the hospital, but it turned out not to be real labor, and they returned home after a few hours. This incident, however, made them realize that childbirth was truly imminent. "We're all ready now, so everything will be fine anytime," Sarah encouraged Chloe. "We'll rush to the hospital, too, so don't worry." Arthur kept a hospital bag ready in the car, prepared to head to the hospital at any moment. His company colleagues also promised to cover the construction site for him in case of emergency. "Everyone is cooperating, and I'm truly grateful," Arthur told Chloe. "I can focus only on you and Leo, so we can approach the birth with peace of mind." Then, on the early morning of December 10th, the moment finally arrived. Chloe felt real labor pains, and Arthur frantically called the hospital. Receiving instructions to come to the hospital immediately, the two hurried there. At the same time, Sarah and Ethan were also contacted and rushed to the hospital. In the hospital delivery room, Chloe bravely faced childbirth. Arthur held his wife's hand, continuously offering words of encouragement. Sarah and Ethan waited anxiously in the waiting room, praying for a safe delivery. As time passed, at 3:20 in the afternoon, a healthy cry echoed from the delivery room. Arthur excitedly rushed into the waiting room, shouting, "He's born. A healthy baby boy." Sarah and Ethan shed tears of joy as they embraced Arthur. This happy moment, celebrating the birth of a new family member, brought a wave of warmth to the hospital. The next afternoon, Sarah and Ethan visited the maternity ward of Chicago General Hospital, carrying flowers and presents for the baby. The hallway echoed with newborn cries and the joyful voices of families celebrating new life. Their hearts swelled with anticipation and joy. They had been too excited to sleep much the night before, but today was the day they would actually meet Leo. Room number 305, Sarah confirmed, checking the hospital directory while speaking to Ethan. Chloe might be tired, but she's probably looking forward to our visit. Yes, Ethan answered with a smile. From Arthur's message, both mother and baby are doing well, so that's reassuring. I can't wait to meet Leo. When they knocked on the hospital room door, Arthur's cheerful voice invited them in. Entering the room, Chloe was lying in bed with a tired expression, but her face glowed with the profound joy of becoming a mother. In her arms, a tiny baby wrapped in white blankets slept quietly. Arthur sat in a chair nearby, watching over his wife and baby, his face filled with the unmistakable pride of new fatherhood. "Chloe, you did wonderfully." Sarah approached the bedside and gently kissed her cheek. "You really worked hard. Leo is so cute." "Thank you." Chloe showed a weak but happy smile. "This is Leo. We had planned on Arthur Jr., but once he was born, Leo just seemed like the perfect name." "Leo, what a lovely name," Ethan said, looking down at the baby. "Hello, Leo. I'm your Uncle Ethan." Arthur stood up and proudly introduced the baby. "Look at how small his hands are, but his grip is very strong. Last night when he grasped my finger, it felt like he didn't want to let go. May I hold him?" Sarah asked with sparkling eyes. Of course, Chloe carefully transferred Leo to her sister's arms. "Please support his head firmly." Sarah lifted Leo with practiced hands. As a nurse, handling newborns wasn't unusual for her. But holding her own nephew brought a profound, special emotion. "He's so small and light, yet I can feel such a strong life force," she murmured. "It's truly a miracle. Ethan, you should hold him too." Ethan received Leo carefully, though somewhat nervously. "Wow, he really is small," he murmured, "but in this tiny body, an entire long life is contained." He gazed intently at Leo's face. Leo was sleeping, but occasionally frowned slightly or moved his lips. Ethan observed the baby's small hands and feet and his facial features in detail. "What a cute child. Does he look like Arthur?" "Everyone says so," Arthur answered happily. "But I think I can see Chloe's features too." For a while, the hospital room was enveloped in a warm, blissful atmosphere. Chloe occasionally closed her eyes from childbirth fatigue, but smiled happily, seeing her family surrounding Leo. Arthur was taking photos and meticulously keeping detailed records of Leo's condition. "I couldn't sleep at all last night," Arthur said with a laugh. "Chloe was sleeping from exhaustion, but I was too excited to sleep even a wink. I kept watching Leo the whole time." "All first-time fathers are like that," Sarah answered gently. "But for Chloe's recovery, you need to get some rest, too." Ethan, meanwhile, was observing Leo's facial features more closely while holding him. His eyes, accustomed to seeing countless faces in court, were trained to remember people's characteristics in minute detail. He carefully studied Leo's small nose, eye shape, lip line, and overall facial contours. Suddenly, Ethan's expression changed. He frowned and looked at Leo's face intently once more. With a puzzled expression, he examined Leo's face from different angles. "What's wrong?" Sarah noticed her husband's change and asked. "No, it's nothing," Ethan answered hastily, though his expression was still confused. "I might just be tired." However, in Ethan's mind, a strong sense of unease was spreading. Leo's facial features strikingly resembled someone in his memory. That someone was a defendant in a bigamy case he had handled several years ago. But that had to be a coincidence. People could have similar facial features. Ethan doubted his own memory. Yet, the face of that man he had encountered numerous times in court was vividly etched in his memory. The distinctive nose shape, the spacing between eyes and eyebrows, and the lip shape. Leo's features bore too strong a resemblance to that man. Ethan, are you okay? Chloe asked with concern. You look pale. Yes, I'm fine, Ethan answered with a forced smile. I'm just moved by how cute Leo is. However, doubts were rapidly growing in his mind. Perhaps Arthur wasn't who he thought he was, but that was probably overthinking. Arthur was an honest, loving husband who truly adored Chloe. There was no way such a person could be a bigamist. Ethan tried to return Leo to Arthur. What a beautiful baby, Arthur. You'll have a happy family. At that moment, Ethan saw Arthur's hand. As Arthur received Leo, Ethan noticed the wedding ring on his left ring finger. Ethan remembered that the defendant in that bigamy case also wore a similar wedding ring. Furthermore, Arthur had a small, distinctive scar on his wrist. This was the exact scar the defendant in that case also had. Ethan's heart began beating violently. This was too much of a coincidence to explain away. Yet, he still couldn't be absolutely certain. Perhaps his memory was becoming vague. Sarah, Ethan spoke to his wife in a low voice. I need to talk to you outside for a moment. Huh? Now. Sarah was confused. Is there some urgent matter? It's just a work issue, Ethan answered with a forced smile. Just for 5 minutes. Chloe and Arthur were a bit surprised, but understood it was Ethan's work matter. Thank you for coming despite your busy schedule. Arthur expressed his gratitude. Sarah sensed her husband's urgency and said to Chloe, "We'll be right back," before leaving the room with Ethan. Once in the hallway, Ethan's demeanor suddenly became intensely serious. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly. Sarah, call the police right now. What? Why? Sarah stared at her husband, completely unable to understand. Ethan, what on earth is going on? Didn't you notice? Ethan's voice was shaking. That baby is, he couldn't continue his words. Ethan's face was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead. His condition was abnormal, and Sarah couldn't comprehend what was happening at all. Ethan, please explain. Sarah desperately pleaded with her husband. Why do we need to call the police? What about Leo? Ethan took a deep breath and looked directly into his wife's eyes. Sarah, this is very difficult to say, but I think Arthur is the defendant from a bigamy case I handled 3 years ago. Bigamy? Sarah looked incredulous. That can't be right. Arthur was single before marrying Chloe. We even met his family. That's the problem, Ethan continued in a low voice. Bigamists often use different identities with multiple women. Leo's facial features are too similar to Victor Thorne, the defendant in that case. Especially the nose shape, eye spacing, and even the wrist scar match. Sarah didn't want to believe her husband's story. However, Ethan's observational skills and memory, honed in countless courtrooms, were remarkably reliable. He rarely made mistakes. But if it's really true, Sarah couldn't continue her words. Chloe's marriage would be legally invalid, Ethan answered heavily. And Leo would legally be considered an illegitimate child. While the two were discussing, police patrol cars arrived at the hospital parking lot. When Sarah had called, she had mentioned that Ethan was a lawyer and there was suspicion of bigamy. So, the police responded with unusual speed. Chicago police detectives Johnson and Harris entered the hospital. Detective Johnson was an experienced detective in his 50s who specialized in family crimes. Detective Harris was a young female detective skilled in victim care. Mr. Hamilton, Detective Johnson greeted, checking Ethan's business card. You mentioned suspicion of bigamy. Could you explain in detail? Ethan explained in detail about the Victor Thorne case he had handled 3 years ago. In that case, it was discovered that a man named Victor Thorne was simultaneously maintaining married life with 3 different women. He told each woman different occupations and backgrounds, skillfully fabricating his true identity. Victor Thorne told all 3 wives that he worked in construction, Ethan explained, and he claimed frequent business trips due to work, using that as an excuse to move between each home. What similarities do you see with the current suspect, Arthur Davies? Detective Harris asked. The physical characteristics are remarkably similar, plus his occupation is also construction-related, and he talks about frequent business trips, Ethan answered. And the newborn's facial features are strikingly similar to Victor Thorne. The detectives decided to return to the police station temporarily to check case records. Meanwhile, Ethan and Sarah had to return to the hospital room. They needed to act naturally so Chloe and Arthur wouldn't suspect anything. Returning to the room, Chloe looked worried. Are you okay? I was concerned when you suddenly left. I'm sorry, Sarah answered, trying to stay calm. Ethan's office had an emergency call, but everything's fine now. Arthur was comforting Leo while greeting them with a smile. Thank you for your hard work. Seeing that smile, Sarah felt deeply conflicted. If Ethan's suspicion was correct, this man was a calculating fraud who was cruelly deceiving Chloe. An hour later, Detective Johnson called. After investigating the police database, they found no criminal record under the name Arthur Davies, but they wanted to conduct fingerprint verification. They also discovered that one of the aliases Victor Thorne had used in the past was Arthur Davies. This is likely not a coincidence, Detective Johnson explained over the phone. We'll proceed with the investigation carefully, but in case the suspect tries to flee the hospital, we're positioning security. The next afternoon, police officially began investigating Arthur's identity. They cooperated with hospital security staff and established discreet surveillance to prevent Arthur from leaving the hospital. To ensure Chloe and Leo's safety, plainclothes officers were quietly stationed in the ward. Around 3 p.m., Detectives Johnson and Harris visited the hospital room. Chloe was visibly confused, not understanding what was happening. You're Arthur Davies, aren't you? Detective Johnson spoke politely. We'd like to ask you some questions for identity verification. Arthur's face stiffened momentarily. Is there some problem? This is a routine investigation, Detective Harris answered calmly. Could we see your birth certificate and identification? Arthur hesitantly took out his driver's license from his wallet. However, when the detectives requested more detailed identity verification, his attitude abruptly changed. Actually, I have urgent business to attend to. Arthur stood up frantically. Chloe, I need to go back to the company for a moment. But you said you took the day off. Chloe looked at her husband strangely. At that moment, Detective Johnson showed Arthur an old photograph he was holding. It was an arrest photo of Victor Thorne from 3 years ago. Do you know the man in this photograph? Arthur's face turned completely pale. He looked at the photograph, clearly shaken. I don't know him, Arthur answered in a trembling voice. I really am in a hurry. Arthur Davies, or should I say Victor Thorne? Detective Johnson said quietly. You're under arrest on suspicion of bigamy. The hospital room was momentarily enveloped in stunned silence. Chloe couldn't comprehend what was happening and stared at her husband with a dazed, horrified expression. What are you talking about? Chloe shouted in utter confusion. Arthur committing bigamy? That's impossible. Detective Harris gently explained to Chloe. I'm sorry, but this man is already married to 2 other women, and your marriage to him is legally invalid. Chloe looked at Arthur with an expression of profound disbelief. That's a lie, right? Arthur, this is some mistake, right? Explain it to me. Arthur dropped his shoulders as if finally giving up. Chloe, I'm so sorry. The only thing that was true was that I loved you. Loved? Chloe screamed through tears. That's it. You have multiple wives and you loved me. Police confiscated evidence and took Arthur away. Left in the hospital room were Chloe, who collapsed in tears, and the stunned Sarah and Ethan. Sarah, Chloe called out in a trembling voice. Was my marriage fake? What's going to happen to Leo? Sarah embraced Chloe. It's okay. We're here. Leo is your precious child. That will never change. However, reality was undeniably harsh. Chloe's marriage was legally invalid, and Leo would legally be considered an illegitimate child. Furthermore, the existence of Arthur's other wives was revealed, creating a mountain of complex legal problems. That night, Ethan spoke to his wife. We have to support Chloe and Leo. Legal procedures, emotional support. We have to do everything. Of course, Sarah answered. family isn't just about blood relations. Supporting each other in times of trouble is what real family means. In the hospital's newborn nursery, Leo slept quietly. 1 year later, Chicago's streets were wrapped in golden autumn foliage. In Sarah and Ethan's living room, 1-year-old Leo was toddling, trying to walk toward his uncle's knees. Watching this adorable sight, Chloe wore a truly peaceful smile. Leo, you're doing great. Chloe encouraged her son. Can you walk all the way to Uncle Ethan? This past year had been the most profoundly difficult period of Chloe's life. After Arthur's arrest, he was convicted of bigamy and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Additionally, he became liable for compensation to the other victimized women. Chloe's marriage was declared legally invalid, and she suffered immense wounds, both legally and emotionally. During the first few months, Chloe was in deep despair. Her distrust of men was profound, and she was tormented by the humiliation of being so thoroughly deceived. However, Leo's innocent existence sustained her. And above all, Sarah and Ethan's unconditional love and unwavering support became the powerful force that helped her recover. At first, I thought I didn't know what would become of me, Chloe said, holding Leo, but now I can feel hope for a new life. Having this child makes every day meaningful. Ethan provided full, unwavering support to Chloe in all legal matters: child custody, child support claims, and compensation claims for damages from the fraudulent marriage. He meticulously solved complex legal problems one by one. Through his expertise and extensive connections, Chloe was able to build a financially stable situation. You're truly a strong woman, Chloe, Ethan said. Seeing how much you've grown this past year, I respect you from the bottom of my heart. Sarah also used her extensive experience as a nurse to support Leo's health management and childcare. When Leo cried in the middle of the night, or when Chloe was exhausted, Sarah always rushed over to help. The days of 3 people cooperating to raise a child created new bonds that transcended conventional concepts of family. I really learned this year that family isn't just about blood relations or legal relationships, Chloe said thoughtfully. You and Ethan are Leo's and my real family. Chloe had started working at a new beauty salon 6 months ago. Her colleagues understood her situation and flexibly accommodated things like work schedule adjustments. When Leo got sick or there were sudden matters to attend to, Sarah and Ethan supported her, ensuring she could work with peace of mind. The people at my new workplace adore Leo too, Chloe reported happily. Everyone says, "What a lovely son." Having so many people who love him was truly happiness for Leo. Leo was growing into a healthy, active child. He had become adept at walking and was starting to speak simple words. He especially used the words mama, uncle, and auntie frequently, delighting all 3 adults. This child has no memory of his father, but he has many family members who love him, Sarah said while gently stroking Leo's head. I'm sure a child raised in an environment full of love will become a wonderful adult. Ethan had recently been dedicating his efforts to supporting victims of fraudulent marriage and bigamy cases, leveraging his expertise in family law. Chloe's experience had become invaluable knowledge for helping other victims. Difficult experiences, when overcome, can become the power to help others, Ethan said, looking at his wife and Chloe. What our family has experienced might become hope for people in similar circumstances. When dinner time came, the 3 adults and Leo gathered around the dining table. Leo sat in his high chair, skillfully using a spoon to eat. Watching this heartwarming scene, Chloe felt profoundly happy. A year ago, I didn't know how to protect this child's future, Chloe said tearfully. But now, I'm confident that Leo is growing up surrounded by love. Mutual support and continuing to love unconditionally is far more important than blood relations or legal relationships. That night, after Leo fell asleep, the 3 adults sat in the living room, drinking coffee and talking quietly. The new form of family they had built through overcoming immense difficulties was bound together by deep, unbreakable bonds that transcended conventional concepts. A real family is a relationship where people support each other in times of trouble and continue to love unconditionally, Sarah said quietly. We've proven that. Outside the window, Chicago's night scene sparkled quietly. In the house where little Leo's peaceful sleeping breath could be heard, three adults held hope for a new tomorrow in their hearts. Their story, having learned the true meaning of family, was about to welcome a new chapter.